Welcome, everyone, to our broadcast of a 2020 look at global manufacturing growth. Today, we'll discuss new customer demands, emerging opportunities, and the solutions supporting the new production paradigm. Our panel includes some top names in manufacturing. From the National Association of Manufacturers, the NAM, we have Brian Raymond. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you.
From Aberdeen Group, we have Kevin Prouty, Senior VP of Research. Welcome,
Thank you,
Kevin.
Patricia.
From Microboard Processing, Inc., Nicole Russo. And finally, from Infor, Rebecca Kiefer. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you.
This is going to be a really great discussion today. As a brief reminder, our program has been designed to be interactive. With a Q&A session at the end of the broadcast, you'll be able to submit your questions at any time during the broadcast. Simply enter your question in the Ask a Question box on your webcast player and hit submit. We'll collect the questions throughout the program and answer as many as time permits at the end of the program. And now, with our introductions and program overview complete, let's start the broadcast by defining the current market. Now, Brian, the National Association of Manufacturers is a very active and influential organization. So tell us about the focus of your organization and why you feel robust manufacturing is so critical to economic strength.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with Infor and the other panelists. Let me just start with one number first. The manufacturing industry contributed $2.08 trillion to the U.S. economy in 2013. Taken alone, manufacturing in the U.S. would be the 8th largest economy in the world. Think about that. Only 7 countries would be larger than U.S. manufacturing if it was a country in and of itself. The NAM's job is to represent those companies in Washington. We are the Washington's largest industrial trade association. We have 12,000 member companies from every single industry segment in every congressional district and in all 50 states. We have a robust policy agenda, tax agenda, trade agenda, technology agenda, regulatory agenda, and our job is to represent those manufacturers I mentioned that contribute so much to this economy in front of Capitol Hill and the administration. Essentially, our job is to make sure that the United States is the best place in the world to manufacture.
All right, terrific. So what do you see, though, as the current state of manufacturing? There's a growing optimism. Is that premature, or do you think that it's well-founded?
I think it's 100% well-founded. That 2.08 trillion number I already mentioned a couple times, that's 12.5% of the nation's gross domestic product. That's a huge contribution to this economy. And manufacturing is a good investment. For every dollar invested in manufacturing, it returns $1.32. That's the highest multiplier effect than any other industry. Not only is it a good investment, we are a huge employer. Manufacturing directly employs 12 million men and women in America. Indirectly, we employ over 17 million people in America. That means 1 in every 6 workers in America are directly employed because of manufacturing. And these are good jobs. These are great jobs. The average annual salary in 2013 for a manufacturer was $77,000. People don't get that. This is no longer a dirty, dusty, dingy industry or environment. These are clean rooms. These are high-tech jobs. These are high-skilled jobs. I mean, frankly, that $77,000 number is $12,000 higher than the average wage across all other industries. So not only are these workers well-paid, they're also smart. And these are innovative companies we're talking about. Manufacturers as an industry spend 2/3 of all private sector R&D. We also have more patents than any other industry, so we're innovative. We're the innovative leaders, frankly, if you ask me, of all industry around the world. So is the optimism well-founded? I think yes, given all those numbers there.
Yeah. Okay, terrific. Now, Kevin, in your role at Aberdeen, you do extensive research on the impact of ERP software solutions in manufacturing. And do you agree that manufacturers are investing in technology, and is that what they should be investing in right now?
Yeah, I mean, if we take a step back for a minute, we do a fairly regular research project, basically annual, where we ask people what are the pressures they're feeling, ask manufacturers, and typically, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, it's been about cost. It's been cost, speed to market, things like that. This year, for the first time in quite a while, preparing for growth. Managing growth or preparing for growth, that was the top pressure companies were feeling. Now, that translates back into IT because they have to prepare their technology infrastructure, their IT infrastructure for that growth. A lot of times, especially small to mid-sized companies, have a hard time scaling their IT operations. So what we see is that they're looking at what systems they can put in place to allow them to grow either organically within their plant, buy a new plant, move into a new market, develop some new suppliers. So it looks pretty good from that standpoint. The only real hitch we see, the only rock on the shoals, as I call it, is demographics. We see a big bubble of retirements passing through the system. It started a few years ago, but it's going to start accelerating, probably continue for the next 7 to 10 years. And what's walking out the door is knowledge of business processes, knowledge of the actual production itself, the product, how do you make tooling, how do you program production machinery. And we do see companies starting to invest in trying to compensate for that. They've realized they're not going to be able to replace all those people one for one. So they're trying to put in place technologies that will compensate, that will capture best practices and business processes, that will capture some of that knowledge and allow the company to let people have access to that business process and knowledge and apply discipline to it at the same time. So yes, there is a significant amount of growth opportunity in manufacturing, especially around technology today. In fact, if they aren't investing in technology, most likely they aren't going to be in business for very long.
And Kevin, I'd like to address that actually as a business owner of a manufacturing company and the ability to find talent. It's absolutely a hard thing to do in this environment. Alongside of that, I always say that when someone says, let's go talk to the power user in the company, that for me is always a problem. The power user to me is a critical point of failure. So what do we do to combat these two things? To combat lack of talent or the inability to find it quickly, and to essentially make everyone in our company a power user. We put in ERP systems that are agile, that are flexible, that have workflows in them that allow employees to quickly adapt to the environment. We train them. We can go out and find talent that maybe doesn't understand and know our industry right away, but again, they're trainable. In return, we're able to retain them because they're more interested. They feel better about their jobs. They feel better about the ability to come in and understand that job each day through a nice ERP system that's streamlined. And we're able to cross-train them into multiple roles. Again, they're more fulfilled. So it's a very nice relationship that we can have with an ERP system such as Infor that allows us to do that.
So Nicole, I love that example because I mean that's just one snapshot of one company and how you're dealing with this. But you could repeat that, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of times around the U.S. manufacturing industry about these challenges that they're facing. There's in our research, there's over 500,000 job openings. And you're an example, and I think hopefully many companies are doing this, they're using technology to bridge that gap. Of course, we need more workers. There's the STEM issues that everyone knows about, but the use of technology is a tremendous tool to help you compete.
Yeah, I think a real-world example of it is one process I always watch is quoting estimating process. It kind of sets the tone for a company's profitability down the line. In many companies, and I'd say the majority of companies from our research, that quoting estimating process is usually locked up in one or two people. They're the people that know there's no workflow. The workflow is them walking down into the plant, talking to a machinist, walking to a mold builder to get the cost information, bring it back up. When that person's not available, that process comes to a halt. How do you replace that person? That's probably 30, 40 years of experience built into that guy. That's why you need these systems that Nicole was talking about to instill some of that discipline, capture some of that knowledge, and put it where people can get at it.
So Kevin, we've been hearing about ERP solutions. Can you elaborate on ERP as a solution with the research that you've done?
Well, I mean, ERP, from our research, is the core business system that most companies need. It provides a discipline on the business processes. It also can provide transparency. It extends that information around to the rest of the company. The key thing about ERP and the way it's typically been used is a large infrastructure was put in place for IT to manage the ERP system itself. That, if you go back 10, maybe 20 years ago, the companies that had the best IT infrastructure were the ones that they won the battle because they became flexible enough to use their ERP system where they wanted. Smaller companies were left doing everything very manually on the spreadsheets. What we've seen recently is companies that are willing, even small companies, willing to invest in new ways to deploy ERP, have been able to make themselves look like bigger companies. What I mean by that is they've been able to do things. They've been able to speed up their new product introduction. They've been able to improve their productivity so that they can look like a bigger company. They have those same capabilities that those large companies have without that huge IT infrastructure investment. In some ways, what we're seeing is the IT infrastructure becoming commoditized and becoming less mission critical. It's almost like the plumbing. Yeah, we have plumbing in our factory. Yes, we have IT infrastructure, and that's an oversimplification, but that's where it's heading right now.
Okay.
Well, and you made the point earlier that no matter what the size of the company, they all know that they have to use technology. If they don't use technology, they're not going to survive. They're not going to grow. They're not going to innovate. There's 300,000 manufacturing companies in the United States. 95% of them have 100 or fewer employees. So when you talk about technology being important to manufacturers, software being important to manufacturers, these are small companies. These aren't the big guys. They know that they have to use it to survive.
Right, and a key component of that is some of the newer technologies that you're seeing associated with ERP, collaboration technologies, cloud, big data, mobility. Those are key components now of any enterprise application, whether it's ERP, PLM, or whatever. But especially around ERP, the ERP vendors are investing heavily in those four types of technology to kind of surround ERP.
And I'll add to that, as a small manufacturer, that we made the decision over 15 years ago to go to an ERP system here, and that changed the game for us and the ability to service our customers and the type of customers we're able to go after. So not only does it allow us to survive and be competitive and have data that's available to analyze, but the customer base that we want appreciates it, and they're requiring it in order for us to do business with them.
And you can scale and you can grow faster.
That's right.
And even beyond that, when you get into compliance issues, a lot of the regulatory, the increasing, usually like number 4 or 5 on that list of pressures I talked about earlier, one of them is regulatory compliance, and it's you get dragged kicking and screaming into the global economy. All of a sudden, it's not just your local compliance. You have to worry about where your products are being used. They may be a subassembly someplace, and you need to track that. Doing that manually is not only manually intensive; it's full of risk. There's a lot of break points there that you could get yourself into trouble.
And Rebecca, how do you see software providers meeting the changing needs? I mean, do you agree that new technology is paving the way for this manufacturing resurgence, and is cloud deployment the path?
Absolutely. I'm also very optimistic about manufacturing and the role that ERPs can play in companies differentiating and competing more effectively in today's market. We at Infor believe that your ERP should be a really powerful tool that helps a company achieve their strategic objectives in technology. Leveraging the latest technology is a big part of that. If you take the user experience, for example, we've infused analytics directly into the business process and made it available from within an ERP screen so that users can have the most important information, current information at precisely the right moment that they need it so that they can make an informed, intelligent decision right then. Technology also allows users to take their work anywhere, working on a tablet. It's been said that companies only use 30% of their ERP. Well, making the solution more accessible to users makes it more valuable, and that higher adoption translates to more value and a faster return for companies as well. So I'm very excited about the innovations that ERP solutions are offering to customers so that they can achieve more with less, right? Optimizing utilization of resources, delivering better products faster. And then to take the second part of your question about cloud, I absolutely think cloud is the way forward for customers. If you look at the costs of running an ERP, paying your maintenance, your annual maintenance on the ERP solution, plus the database, operating system, server, real estate, full-time employees, it's difficult for companies to run an ERP for the same cost point as our cloud SaaS offering. And then if you look at the environment of mergers and acquisitions, being able to expand and contract your footprint to new plants, new locations, new countries easily, it's very, very valuable.
Yeah, I actually think that's an important point, the cloud piece of it, because when you look at cloud, what's interesting is you talk about the cost of cloud, and I'll talk a little bit about cost of the infrastructure around ERP. But we did a study, and we've done an annual study on cloud and ERP for several years now, and we were completely stunned when we got the results back from one of the first ones we did, where we expected it to be cost. We figured everyone would say, oh yeah, it's always about cost. But the number one issue, or the number one reason people went to cloud, was collaboration. So we dug into it a little bit, went back and talked to a lot of the our community, and what they told us was that they aren't, as Rebecca said, they aren't able to get everyone using ERP. They aren't able to take advantage of all the features and functions. So what they look at cloud as is, because they don't need infrastructure everywhere for cloud ERP, they can now extend cloud out to places and people that weren't using it before. So that's a critical part of it. I mean, once again, getting back to Rebecca's comment about the 30%, that's from one of our studies. Our studies say that the best-in-class companies only use 40%. The poorer companies not doing as well operationally, are using between 10 and 20%. Just think about how much effort, you know this, Nicole, how much effort it goes into putting an ERP system in, and then only using 10%. And that the cloud can contribute directly to that utilization rate going up.
Mm-hmm. Nicole, can you tell us about the collaboration that you're seeing in your company then?
Sure. So I think what we see the most is in this environment, customers, it's no longer acceptable just to have on-time delivery, quality, and cost. You have to add some value in addition to that. So collaborating with our customers on data. They want it real time. They don't want it in weeks, days, they want it in hours, and they want it to be correct. The ability to retain that data, analyze it, and be able to push it out to them real time is critical to our success. It's a key differentiator for us in our business. As well, on the supply chain side, when you look at suppliers, how can we forecast better? How can we get in the pipeline sooner in our business? The diversity of the products we run is critical to have the pipeline up and running. And in turn, our workforce is now more agile. It has a flexible database at its fingertips. It's understanding daily how machines are running, how customer requirements are laid out, how are we doing to the customer requirements, how is the supply chain performing, and that's all done through an agile ERP system. So the collaboration you can see is trifold: customer, supplier, workforce, and it's a critical piece of our success.
I think the workforce piece, as well as obviously customer and supplier, but what's important there is something I call the information loop, and that is they're in the information loop. In older ERP systems, especially ones where it was limited access, very limited access, both physically and through the software, people were just out of the information loop. They just did not know what was going on around them. They had a hard time prioritizing what they needed to be working on. And now what we see with more modern ERP systems and more people using it, you see people making faster decisions. One stat we had was the time to decision during a crisis has dropped for companies with a modern ERP system drops 20 to 30%. So they're able to make those decisions that much faster.
I think about it like this: 100 years ago, manufacturing, that's all these themes we're talking about here are almost the themes of what manufacturing is built on: collaboration, working together, finding the right solutions, getting to your customers faster, talking to your customers all the time. Now that the world has gotten bigger, we've had to use technology to make that world smaller, to service our customers, to put out a better product, to talk to our suppliers. It just shows you that technology, again, I mean, this is the theme that I keep saying, is how it is differentiating manufacturers in the U.S. from our competitors all around the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you incorporate a solution like Mingle, a social business solution, and being able to dynamically deploy the right team for that collaboration and decision-making process, you can really accelerate those timelines.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. And Rebecca, are you changing the way that you help manufacturers meet customer expectations for customization and highly configured products?
Absolutely. So we have invested significantly in developing industry-focused functionality and putting it directly into our core ERP. We really believe that richer feature function translates to a stronger business case. So once we had that functionality developed, industry-focused functionality, we bundled it into industry-focused suites. Software suites are not new to the industry, but industry-focused suites are. And that reduces the number of customizations, helps accelerate implementation timelines, raises the bar on the quality of the implementation and resource utilization. There's a number of different benefits there.
And I think from our business aspect, we've been able to see that the diversity of the products we run, different bills of materials, different industries, different supply chains, that the ERP system here has been very flexible to adopt to that. and our ability to turn things very quickly for customers in more specific silos in a more cost-competitive way.
And Rebecca, just share some examples of how ERP solutions support manufacturing growth initiatives, if you could.
Yeah, so there's a big shift right now going from cost savings to growing revenues, and really the way that you grow revenues is through innovation, bringing better, newer products to market faster, right? So traditional ERP was integrated with product lifecycle management solutions, and typically the communication between those departments was really revolved around those touch points between those solutions, and so you still had a lot of silo type of organizations.
That new product introduction process, that's that friction between product design and manufacturing.
That's right, but if you couple in, going back to social business, Mingle, if you couple that into the process, you can really leverage that solution for collaboration, for efficient communication, and rolling out those changes throughout your organization, making sure that everybody's prepared. Procurement is reaching out to the right vendors and purchasing the right materials, that engineering change orders are making it to the shop floor, and that all of that translates to delivering better quality products faster to customers.
Yeah, that change order process, Nicole and I were talking about this earlier, that is a process that is so highly collaborative and so dependent on solid, disciplined workflows that, I mean, I used to be involved in change management processes where I was telling the story of you'd sign off on one as an engineer, and by the time it got down to manufacturing, 5 other people had made a change to it and never informed you, so that your designs were already out of date.
Right.
And that's what that new product introduction process is probably the biggest bet companies make, is do I put a new product into production? Do I not bother going after that product? And then all tied around that is that change order process.
Yeah, and then the social business tool will also bring transparency to those decision points. I also wanted to go back to growth and tie that back to the cloud. If you think about significant business events or days like Black Friday, for example, and all of the processing power that it takes to be able to handle a spike in your business like that, cloud is the perfect tool to help address that, and customers don't have to make a huge investment in their infrastructure to be able to realize that.
Nicole, any thoughts on that?
Well, I actually wanted to come back to the revenue growth and the Mingle, and we've actually had the advantage of helping some customers in the most recent years do some reshoring, bringing product back to the United States. We thought the proximity would bring these customers on site quite often. They're only now a couple hours drive away, a couple hour flight away. Because I can seamlessly move data back and forth to them, they don't have to be on site. I can take an ERP system and push data to them virtually, real time. So again, the effects on the value-added services I can offer. I'd love to have my customers in the building, but I know they have better things to do. I've got product to run for them, and they just want good products. So again, a key differentiator for us.
And Brian, could you give us some final thoughts and takeaways on what manufacturers really should be doing to take advantage of some of these emerging opportunities?
Well, listen, I mean, I think we've heard throughout all the comments here that technology is a part of everyday life of manufacturers. You know, if you're not, and I've said this before, if you're not using technology, you're not going to survive. And I think the only way to grow is to innovate, and using companies like Infor and the solutions that are out there is one way that manufacturers are going to continue to grow.
And Kevin, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think we've touched on most of them, but I really think the one that sticks in my mind when we do our research is around cloud. You know, cloud mobility, you know, you hear a lot of people talking about mobility, you hear people talking about cloud. I've said this before that, you know, my wife asked me what cloud is, and I can't answer her. I don't know, because it's such a broad term now. To me, cloud is a new deployment model, but what it does is it makes you go back and rethink your entire IT infrastructure. Am I investing my money in the right place? Or should I take that money, put it someplace else, and let someone who knows how to manage security, who knows how to manage reliability and uptime, should I let that company manage that part of it? You know, if we go back once again 10, 20 years ago, manufacturing companies had almost become IT companies. That's, you know, they were so focused on getting IT up and running and keeping it running, and manufacturing companies need to get back to manufacturing and let someone else handle the IT infrastructure. I can't stress that strongly enough, that that's where cloud's going, and that's the biggest benefit of cloud, regardless of what the hype is around it.
Rebecca, any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the optimism for the manufacturing industry is very well founded. I do think that there are some new challenges that manufacturers are faced with, changing user needs, customer demands, global execution, and I think those are all really real and important concerns. But I also think that the software industry is rising to the challenge, and I think Infor is really happy to be part of that.
Great. And Nicole, any last words for our viewers or final takeaways?
Sure. I think one of the key mottos of our business is you only have two options. You're either standing still, which means you're going backwards, or you're moving forward. So every day we're figuring out how to recreate ourselves, how to be more competitive, how to offer more value-added services. And I'm most excited about the ability to take software suites within Infor and actually take existing silos we've set up by department with some bolt-on softwares and roll them together into a really nice package of an ERP system. And I know we will be doing that with Infor coming forward in the very near future. So I'm very excited about the prospects for our business and our customers and suppliers going forward.
Okay, great. Well, now let's open it up to questions from our audience. So here's our first one. How big of a company do you have to be to leverage a full ERP system? How necessary is it if you have, say, only 35 employees? Kevin, would you like to answer that?
Sure. It's actually, if you go back a few years ago, maybe again 10 or 20 years ago, you really couldn't run a full ERP system. It was more, you were most likely running just electronic books or something like that to do accounting, because of the infrastructure you needed. Only the really big companies like a GM, Ford, those type of companies, they had these massive infrastructures. It's what allowed them to operate. They couldn't operate without them. They were innovative around that IT infrastructure. It differentiated them. It made them able to do things that small companies couldn't do. What we're seeing today with the change over to the cloud for your deployment model is that IT infrastructure is not as important anymore. It really comes down to you've got to be able to run your business, not run an IT organization. In fact, I used to talk about this a lot in that companies have become experts in IT, not manufacturing. We need to get back to manufacturing. Companies can't be spending all their resources on just figuring out, can they keep these servers running? There are people that can do that. You don't have to worry about security. You don't have to worry about all that stuff. You just need to focus on manufacturing and making sure you have an application like an ERP system or a PLM system that can help you do your business.
You know, that's great. I mentioned earlier there's 12 million men and women employed by manufacturing. 95% of those companies are small companies, 100 or less, 50 or less, sometimes 25 or less. They need to manufacture. They need to focus on building stuff, on getting product out the door. When they have to dedicate 2, 3, 4, 5 heads to working to being IT experts, that's not going to help them manufacture. To know that there's solutions out there like Infor, like other tools that are out there, so they can get back on the shop floor and getting those goods out the door, that's what they want to focus on.
And if you look at cloud offerings today and the fact that we have a lower cost point for getting into some of these very robust solutions, it means that those smaller companies can now select, implement, they can afford to run and manage those ERP solutions and compete just as effectively as a large company, even though they are small.
Absolutely, I agree.
Oh, they can grow and they can scale and they can get more product out the door. I mean, that's what it is. It's about growth. It's about creating jobs, and it's not about having to manage a data center. And when there's turnkey solutions out there that can help them do that, that's where manufacturers are going to go. Manufacturers, listen, they have a long history of being nimble and agile, and this is just another way of their adapting to outcompete now, out-manufacture all their competitors around the world.
Well, the funny part about that is, maybe 10 years ago, manufacturing led the consumer market as far as technology goes. You could walk into a manufacturing operation, computers everywhere. Everyone was using computers. You'd go and walk in someone's house, maybe 1 out of 2 people had a computer. Maybe a little further than 10 years ago. I'm probably dating myself a little. But now you see people walking down the street with computers in their hands that I would have been envious of 10 years ago to have on my desk. And so what's happening now is you're seeing those manufacturing companies having to try to leapfrog again over that consumer technology to run their businesses, because the people coming in to work there are expecting to have that technology there for them to do their jobs.
I mean, like you, I'm lucky enough to travel around the country to kind of visit some of these facilities, and a lot of these manufacturers now, no matter what the size are, they are calling themselves technology companies, and they walk around with these hardened tablets, or hardened or not sometimes, but some of this technology that you wouldn't have thought of that ever existed or happening inside of places where guys are walking walking around with safety goggles. It's an unbelievable experience to just see how they deploy technology in their products and their processes and frankly everything that they do.
All right, well, we have another question. Is one ERP always the right answer, or should we look at solutions that specialize in areas like warehouse management? Rebecca, would you like to take that?
So we believe that you should look at solutions that specialize, but in conjunction with an ERP that's a good fit for you. So, you know, if you are a make-to-stock environment, you wouldn't want an engineer-to-order environment. So we don't believe that there's a one-size-fits-all generic ERP solution for everybody, but rather a specialized ERP with your specific industry requirements, deep, robust functionality, and then leveraging best-of-breed solutions with ION to loosely couple those applications.
And I can respond to that from the manufacturing side and our ability to upgrade certain sections of our ERP, again, not breaking key connections, also not having a really robust IT group. You know, we've got a very small IT group, so doing that in these smaller departmentalized ways is a lot more beneficial to us as a business as we look at strategic projects over the years, and we can roadmap that much easier with ION, the open integrated network. It's a much more scalable solution to us.
Yeah, one of the I'd say a very common trend in the last 2 or 3 years has been what I call the multiple ERP project, where you may have one larger ERP system managing your finances and maybe even some of your financial compliance issues, but then you have a very manufacturing focused, because you want a manufacturing focused ERP system that's specialized in your manufacturing process, whether it's, like you said, process discrete, automotive, aerospace. And there are many companies out there now that are using multiple ERP systems across their different manufacturing operations because each one of them is specialized a little, and they've become less concerned about having that one monolithic ERP system running everything.
All right. Let's go to another question from our audience. You mentioned, this is for Kevin, you mentioned big data. We hear a lot about this term in the industry, but what does it really mean to manufacturers?
Well, big data is another one of those terms that marketing got a hold of, like with cloud, and luckily my wife hasn't asked me about big data yet, but actually the answer is a lot easier. Big data is really it's a problem that's always been there. Big data is encompassing the concept of going after all this data that you've collected over the years in your ERP system, PLM system, in your spreadsheets, and maybe even unstructured information like emails and things like that, and being able to normalize it and give people the analytical tools from their desktop, from their mobile phone, from their home, to look at and analyze information and make decisions much more quickly. It's really tied very tightly to ERP, because ERP is probably the biggest center of data in most companies. And what we've really seen is that ERP has sort of taken the lead in looking at big data as an application beyond just a simple analytical tool. ERP companies have really come to the fore in providing those self-service tools for business leaders to go and get at the information they need to determine how their company is running.
But let's also talk about big data for a second, if we can, about how useful it is. I mean, obviously we talked about the utility, about how to manage it, but this is a treasure trove of information in here that previously manufacturers captured, or didn't capture at all maybe before technology was widely deployed, but now that they have it, here's what they're finding out how to use it through a lot of these tools out there that companies like Infor provide. They find out how to maybe to tweak the product better, to see where maybe there's some gaps in the supply chain, et cetera. I mean, this is something that, and it goes into a point I wanted to make about how important this data is and how much manufacturers value it, how issues like privacy and security and how that's integrated throughout their entire enterprise to make sure that they keep this secret sauce, they keep this treasure trove of data there. So just to kind of raise that in terms of, I mean, not only is it how we manage it, but how we use it too, right? How we use it, how companies like yours, I'm sure, take that information that you can glean from all these tools out there and deliver a better product.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And in fact, one of the research projects we did around big data and business intelligence, we found that companies that have a more formal business intelligence, big data strategy of some kind, whether they call it that or not, were 20 to 25% faster in their time to decision, and that's a pretty significant change for people. That's at 20 to 25%, a little bit faster than your competition, and you might be able to enter a market a little bit faster, respond to a customer a little bit faster. It has a cascading effect down throughout the company.
Okay. All right, well, our next audience question is for you, Nicole. What single thing would you advise manufacturers to do right now to differentiate themselves given the changes that the industry is experiencing?
So I think what we've really strived to do is workforce awareness. How do you do that? You do that with big data that you can boil down to something that's understandable to your employees. Every company is a sum of its parts, and shame on us if all parts of our business don't know what we're striving to. Every employee should understand their customer requirements, not at the end of the month, not at the end of the quarter, but literally minute by minute as we're running. What are we running for delivery? What are we running for defects? What are the different metrics that are important to that customer? How's supply chain operating? And big data, again, boiled down to a manageable pool of data to our employees out on the production line is very meaningful. So I would say workforce awareness.
I would actually, I agree with Nicole, but I also think they need to look at their, I'm going to beat a dead horse here, their IT infrastructure. They really need to decide where they're going to invest their money. If you're spending 20% of your revenue on IT infrastructure, and I've seen it happen, that's 20% you could be putting someplace else. And so they really need to take a look at things like the cloud and say, is there a way I can shift my IT infrastructure to someone else's burden? And just focus on manufacturing. Again, I'm going to say this, be a manufacturer, not an IT shop.
Okay, very good. And we have one last question, and it is for you, Rebecca. You talked so much about cloud technology that the person who sent this email has to ask, in 2020, will Infor still even be offering any on-premise solutions?
Absolutely. I believe that we will. Let's keep in mind that cloud is a deployment option. Whether you deploy an ERP on-prem or you do it in the cloud, they're just options. So I think in 2020 you'll still see some on-prem solutions, but I think the big trend and the big shift will be to cloud deployed solutions, just because the value and the investment and the dollars are so compelling. It makes a lot of business sense.
I mean, I always go back to the example I use, the AS400. 10 years ago, people would have said, there won't be any AS400s left, in 2014. And sure enough, there are still, thousands of companies running AS400s. And I think you're going to see the same thing. It's not a 1, 2, 3 year, shift. It's a 10, 20 year shift. And you're going to still see companies running on premise, probably 5, 10 years from now.
Yeah, and they'll have a combination.
Yeah, a combination, right?
Hybrid, right?
Yep.
Some on-prem, some in the cloud.
All right, very good. Well, that concludes our webcast. Thank you all so very much. We'd also like to thank you, the audience, for joining us, and a special thank you again to all of our esteemed panelists for sharing really terrific insights and knowledge with us today. And we'd like to hear your thoughts on the topic that we did present here today. So please complete the post-event survey, and you can receive a $5 Starbucks e-card. You can also visit our blog and read more about manufacturing's growth at blogs.infor.com/manufacturing_matters. Thanks so much again, and have a great day.